Hey, ladies, and welcome back to the Rooted Mama. Now, the other day, I was reading a CNN article and it was titled Making Pregnancy Safer for Black Women. And I was like, yes. And as I started reading, something came over me. Like my inner West Coast gangster just started rising up. And I tolerated most of what they were saying in this article until I got to the point where it said Black women should be treated as more fragile than other women. More fragile than other women.
What?
And I gotta be honest, I'm so fed up. This has become like a personal vendetta against the mainstream narrative. Like, when it comes to issues of Black mothers, I envision myself as Suge Knight at the Source Awards, and I'm trying to recruit other artists from Bad Boys Records.
Any artist out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star, don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the record, dancing. Come to Death Row.
I'm ready, I'm up on my stage, and I'm letting Black women know that if they're tired of the medical system all up in their way, telling them that they're fragile, ignoring their choices, come to Rooted Mama Records. So stick around because today we're peeling back the layers on the crisis in Black mothers' health. Now, you might be wondering, where's this fragile Black recommendation coming from? Well, the US has the highest maternal death rate in all high income countries. And for Black women, this risk is even higher. We are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy related complications than white women. And when it comes to our babies, Black babies are more likely to be born preterm, which means before 37 weeks. And it's not that I don't appreciate outlets like CNN shining light on this issue. As a Black woman, this hits close to home for me. These are the stories of women who look like me. But here's the thing. I just feel like they are ruining our chances of actually seeing change with the conclusions like Black mothers are more fragile than other women. My take on this topic might challenge what you've heard before, especially when it comes to how we fix this broken system. If we're going to get to the root of the problem, we need to be asking the hard questions, even if it makes us uncomfortable. So when it comes to the Black maternity crisis, what we've been hearing as of late is that it's mainly due to racism. That same CNN article named implicit bias and systemic racism as one of the biggest problems. They claimed that doctors ignored Black women's complaints about pain and didn't respond when they raised concerns. A perfect example of this is the Serena Williams story. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but she had a pretty intense birth. She ended up having an emergency C-section after her daughter was showing signs of distress during the labor. And after the birth, things got even more complicated as Serena was having trouble breathing, and she almost knew immediately that she had a blood clot. This came from a history of other surgeries when she had blood clots in the past. She knew something was wrong, and she told the medical staff what she needed, and they didn't take her seriously. And she had to keep advocating for herself over and over again until they finally listened. And it turns out that she was right. The test found blood clots in her lungs, and she finally got the treatment that she needed. Stories like Serena's really bring systemic issues in healthcare to the forefront, especially when it comes to the challenges that Black women face. I'm not convinced that the higher maternal death rates among Black women, 3 times higher than white women in the 2020s, are solely related to racist hospital staff. Does it happen sometimes? Absolutely. Was the field of obstetrics built by the experiments done on Black slave women? 100%. Is Planned Parenthood created to sterilize minorities and other undesirables? Yes. Let's discuss that one another day. Let me break down what I think are the actual issues. It really comes down to 2 main things. The first one is that women in general are facing serious problems in the US maternity system. And Black women, number 2, are more vulnerable to these issues because they're dealing with multiple crises at once. Some of them are systemic and others are just self-created. At the start of this episode, I mentioned that the US has the highest mortality rate in all developed countries, meaning the system we have is failing everyone, not just Black women. So, what's going wrong? One major issue is something called maternal morbidity. And this is basically severe complications during childbirth that don't result in death, but leave lasting physical damage. For every woman who dies in childbirth, 70 others experience life threatening complications like hemorrhaging, organ failure, or infections. And many of these complications are preventable. In that same article, they suggested something called patient navigators. Basically, these are people who act as liaisons between patients and the hospitals to ensure quality care. And they do this especially for Black women. One of these navigators actually shared her story in that CNN article. And she talks about how she woke up from a C-section, which means she wasn't actively participating in this. And she found out that she had undergone several blood transfusions and she even had a surprise hysterectomy. Now, she survived, but the experience left her with a life-altering outcome. That's what maternal morbidity looks like. Let's talk about some other unnecessary interventions. The US C-section rate is over 30%. This is much higher than what the World Health Organization recommends, and that is about 10 to 15%. Now, I actually had this like random encounter with a Instagram doctor, and I was bringing up this C-section rate, and she actually told me that they don't follow this anymore. So that recommendation is not followed in the US by most doctors. And it honestly shows. There are hospitals in this country where nearly half of the women, 50%, are having surgical births. Now, don't get me wrong, C-sections can save lives, especially in emergencies. But the truth is, many are performed unnecessarily and often at the doctor's discretion. Doctors used to be trained in things like breech birth, but now they don't even attempt vaginal breech deliveries. And in most cases, they'll just push for this major surgery, presenting it as a safe alternative to vaginal birth, as if it doesn't come with serious risks like infection, hemorrhage, or complications in future pregnancies. Spoiler alert, it does. On top of that, practices like inductions, continuous fetal monitoring, and other routine interventions often create kind of a cascade of complications, increasing the risk for mom and baby. Now, these interventions are treated as the standard, but they're not always necessary or safe. Now, I threw a lot of big words at you like fetal monitoring and inductions, and I know this may be a little bit confusing, but this clip from The Business of Being Born can actually explain it much better than I can.
In the hospital, you're not allowed to have very long labors. So if you're not dilating rapidly, you will be given Pitocin. They'll put the Pitocin in the IV. It will flow into your veins. Pitocin makes contractions longer and stronger and closer together. So then the pain of labor is much worse. So you go with that for a while because you have the epidural, but eventually the pain of the contractions is overwhelming the epidural. You need to up the epidural, and then labor slows down more because of that, so then you need more Pitocin. Now you're not feeling the pain of the extra Pitocin because you've got the epidural, but your baby is getting compressed blood and oxygen supply because Pitocin contractions last so long and are so strong, the blood and oxygen flow to the baby is compromised. And then you're sent off for an emergency cesarean from a baby in distress from contractions induced by the Pitocin, which was necessitated by the epidural.
Step by step, one intervention leads to a series of interventions.
We also need to talk about birth trauma. This can result from physical injuries, but just as often, it stems from the way that women are treated during childbirth. 45%, that's nearly half of all women giving birth, report experiencing birth trauma. And here's the truth. Women are too often dismissed when they discuss their pain, their discomfort, or their concerns. Now, I've heard countless stories of women feeling like their concerns were ignored, like they were saying something was wrong, or they were saying that they wanted to do something, and the doctors just flat out ignored them. And if it wasn't the doctor, it was the other hospital staff, or even midwives. Now, what I'm saying is, it's not just the mortality rate that's the problem in the US. It's the entire experience of childbirth in this country that's broken. We need to ask, How do we create a system that listens to women, values their autonomy, and prioritizes their well being over hospital policy or convenience? Because right now, too many women of all races and ethnicities are walking away from childbirth feeling not only physically broken, but emotionally shattered. At the end of that CNN article, when they asked what doctors could do to fix this problem, the suggestion was to run more tests. The suggestion was to listen to women when they have a problem and be more willing to run more tests. Now, instead of thinking about what the natural birth process is and perhaps doing less, they decided the answer was to run more tests, which means do more. Let's move on. Now, as I said earlier, Black women face devastating maternal health statistics because we're more vulnerable to the flaws in the US maternity system. But why is that the case? The truth is that the Black community as a whole is facing a health crisis, and a lot of it comes down to what we put in and on our bodies. Out of the top 5 causes of death for Black Americans, heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, 4 are directly linked to diet. 55% of Black women aged 20 and older are classified as obese, and 61% of Black women 20 and older have high blood pressure. Before pregnancy, Black women are twice as likely as white women to develop diabetes. These conditions like obesity, high blood pressure, and diabetes don't just affect us day to day. They dramatically increase the risk of complications during pregnancy and childbirth. And I have to say it, these issues are often less to do with racist doctors and more to do with personal choices. I know. Someone just clutched their pearls. I saw they cloned Tyrone, okay? I get it. But let's be real. At this point, we can't keep pulling the race card for every single health issue. First of all, the idea that Black people are poor and ignorant is insulting. Now, one of the big statistics that they love bringing up is that it doesn't matter what the income level of a Black woman is, these same health issues persist across the board. Like, look at Oprah, for example. How many diets has she promoted? She's a billionaire and she still struggles with these same issues. And for those in the lower income brackets, government assistance programs like EBT and SNAP give access to food choices beyond like chips and soda. Like I went to a farmer's market one time where they accepted EBT, and other places like Aldi and Whole Foods, like they all have options. So even if you've never seen a healthy meal in your life, you have a smartphone as well, right? You can look up a healthy diet, a healthy recipe. You have access to endless information about nutrition and healthier living. But food isn't the only issue, right? Like, let's talk about these lifestyles. I feel like hookah and alcohol and other drugs have like a chokehold on our community. And it comes down to like, even in our music, it's constantly represented. Like, I remember growing up and singing that song, blame it on the goose, blame it on the Henny, blame it on the vodka, bubba, bubba, bubba. I don't know the words. Do I know the words? But it's okay. But these songs are like anthems in the Black community. And I feel like it's ingrained in our culture. So like if you show up to a Black cookout and you're sober and you're not drinking, people are going to be side-eyeing you. Like, why? Like, let's not act like the culture doesn't impact our health, because it does. And when you look at the leading causes of death and complications in Black mothers, a pattern starts to emerge. High blood pressure, eclampsia, blood clot, hemorrhage. There's definitely rare cases where these conditions affect super healthy mothers, like Olympian level mothers, but most of the time it follows a predictable pattern tied to our overall health. One of the things that shocked me the most when it comes to stats was on uterine fibroids. Now, these are technically benign and they grow in your uterus, but get this. 70 to 80% of Black women will develop uterine fibroids in their late 40s. Now, having these fibroids greatly increases your risk of so many pregnancy and childbirth complications. The first one is placenta problems. Now, the placenta is the organ that grows in your body to help you nourish your baby. Now, if that placenta just decides to implant in the wrong place in your uterus, or it just decides to detach whenever it feels like it, you are going to have major issues. And one of the biggest ones is heavy bleeding or a hemorrhage. Another complication is called uterine atony. And basically what that means is your uterus can't properly contract. And that's really important for a labor, but also for after labor. So like when your baby is born, your uterus has to continue contracting in order to stop the bleeding, especially when your placenta finally does come off. It has to stop the bleeding. And if your uterus isn't contracting properly, you got major issues. Another problem is kind of a distorted anatomy of your uterus. And basically what that means is that your uterus can be like oddly shaped, and that's because of the placement of these fibroids. And if it is oddly shaped, then you might have problems with contractions and all of the same things that I talked about with the previous complications. Now, here's one that is really mind-blowing. Because when we talk about Black women and the things that are killing them in childbirth, you are 2 to 3 times more likely to have a postpartum hemorrhage. That's a huge bleed if you have uterine fibroids. Now, I just want to pause and let you digest that, because if you have uterine fibroids, 70 to 80% of Black women will develop them. And now we're talking about pregnancy and birth complications, and most of them have to do with bleeding. Are you putting the puzzle pieces together? Because I am. Now, if you're like me, you're probably wondering, why are fibroids so common in Black women? Well, no surprise here, many of the factors have to do with diet. So if you have a diet high in processed foods, higher sugar intake, low fruit and vegetable intake, maybe having low vitamin D levels, which is chronic for most Black women, and having high stress levels, another issue that Black women have. One of the strangest links that I found was the link between uterine fibroids and hair relaxers. I'm talking Dark and Lovely and Just For Me. Yeah, those hair relaxers. We call them perms. Now, there was a study called the Black Women's Health Study, and it's an ongoing study, but it suggested that chemicals in hair relaxers may interfere with hormone production, specifically estrogen, which fuels fibroid growth. Now, here's the thing. Even if you're relaxer free now, past exposure still increases your risk in the future for developing uterine fibroids. Now that I've dropped this huge bomb on you, I'm sure you're wondering, what can we actually do about it? Now, midwives and doulas have been championed as the biggest and most impactful fix for this problem. I love these ideas, and I think it's a step in the right direction. Midwives provide personalized, patient-focused care, and doulas offer a personalized emotional and physical support throughout pregnancy and birth. But here's the elephant in the room, at least in my room. Can your midwife or doula save you from everything? Can they reverse chronic malnutrition? Can they reverse obesity? Can they stop you from taking that 5th shot of Hennessy? Can they give you a securely attached, supportive partner to walk you through pregnancy and birth? The answer is no. As Black women, we have a choice to make. Either we're going to keep waiting for someone in the healthcare system to save us, or we finally take matters into our own hands. It's time for us to reclaim our autonomy, start to practice some self-control, and make lasting changes in our lives, not just for ourselves, but for our babies. We love talking about Black excellence. We celebrate these degrees and self-made millionaires and the celebrities, but we don't want to talk about the stats that really matter. Here's one that I find really interesting. Black women are more likely to die in childbirth than Black men are to be killed by the police. So, where should we really be focusing our energy as a community? If we want to truly embrace Black excellence, we need to get to the root of these crises. And it starts by making small, consistent changes that add up to a healthier, more empowered life. So, my first solution is to change the way that we eat. We have to start eating more whole, nutrient-dense foods. You don't have to go full vegan, you don't have to go carnivore, and you don't have to give up everything overnight. If you start with simple swaps like replacing sugary drinks and drinking more water, or adding a fruit or a vegetable to your daily intake of food, you will start to see changes over time. The biggest one I would say is to limit the processed food, the fried chicken, the snacks, all of that stuff. Limit those things and you'll start to see better, and you'll start to see improvement in your overall health. And I think if you start doing these things before you get pregnant, you won't have to make such major changes in your pregnancy. And I think we'll start to see healthier pregnancies and healthier children. The next thing I would do is prioritize physical activity, even if it's just like a daily walk. Exercise doesn't have to mean like hitting the gym for hours and pumping the iron. It could just be dancing in your living room or taking a walk around your neighborhood. Movement strengthens your heart, it regulates your blood pressure, it improves your mental health, and all of these things are critical for maternal health. The biggest one that I would recommend and I've implemented in my life personally is limiting alcohol. I never like use drugs or anything, but I am definitely a sober mama now. I can't believe the changes that I've seen over the course of time. And I know it's a sensitive topic, but I think it's important to recognize how these substances affect our life. It can increase your blood pressure, it increases the stress on your liver, and sometimes it could even interfere with fertility. I think we need to challenge how we have normalized some of these really actually bad habits in our culture and start to recognize how they are barriers to our overall health, especially in the Black community. Now, when it comes to being Black in America, there are definitely stressors that are present that maybe our white counterparts don't really experience. And I think stress is a mental burden that impacts our system overall. We often think of it as like a mental thing, but it definitely can cause things like inflammation and hormone imbalances and other complications, especially during pregnancy and birth. We have to start to learn how to set healthy boundaries, like saying no to some of the things I talked about, but also no to people, like people who stress us out, partners who stress us out. Maybe we need to reconsider who we're dating. And now this is like a personal thing, Black women, because we love the guys who look good. We kind of like the bad boys, and we kind of like the guys who give us a little, like a little. They tend to be the ones that drain our lives. Like they drain our livelihoods often because they are bad. Like it's not just like fun bad, like they're bad, right? And so I'm talking to you women who are choosing these men because they're fun and exciting, but then you have a baby with them and now you realize how problematic they actually are. And it's so true because the stats on single motherhood in Black women are staggering. Okay. 70% of Black children are born to single mothers. And while single mothers are superheroes, I'm not saying they're not. The stress of carrying that weight alone, of being a single parent, is often so detrimental to our health. And this is true for the mother, but also for the child. Because think about how mother stress carries over into how she parents her children. Okay. So let's talk about making better relationship choices, maybe. And this is especially true when it comes to going into the birth process, like pregnancy and birth. Because if you don't have a partner who is supportive or even present, it's going to be a lot harder for you to be able to advocate for yourself in pregnancy and birth. So what I see is that a lot of Black women sometimes go into birth alone, or they go with another Black woman, like, a family member, and they have been mistreated by the system, or they have been mistreated by their, significant other. Maybe they gave birth alone. Maybe they gave birth with another woman. And as someone who was married and like had my husband there, I didn't have to carry a lot of these burdens alone. He was there to not only support me, but as a man, he was there to protect me. And I just felt so safe, especially in my second birth. And it was largely due to the fact that my husband was there as the source of protection and really playing out his role as the father. So my lasting message is stop settling for relationships that drain you. When it comes down to it, you're going to be the only cup and you're going to be filling your child's cup. And there's someone else there who's also draining you. And you need someone that's going to be pouring into you. So as a Black woman, let's step up. Let's think about our future family and our future mental health and our physical well-being down the line. When you combine healthy relationships and rest and boundaries and a solid support system, you're creating a much healthier foundation for that mother. And that kind of brings me to my last point, because we're talking about this maternal mortality crisis. And really, when it comes down to it, women are experiencing so many health crises, especially Black women, but women in general, when they go into the maternity system, they have their backs against the wall. I've already talked about that. And if you're coming into it already unhealthier and you're coming into it unsupported, maybe there's no partner, maybe you're a single mother, you are going to have a much bigger mountain to climb as that Black mother entering that space than the other women. If we can set ourselves up to better advocate for ourselves through informing ourselves about our health, but also about pregnancy and birth, that's what this podcast is for. If you listen to other episodes, you will find information about how to have a healthier pregnancy and birth. If we can do those things, we are setting ourselves up for a much better success, and it has nothing to do with outside influences. We're not looking for anyone else to save us. We are saving ourselves. And this is important because the goal isn't to survive motherhood. We're not trying to save ourselves from the death that comes along with pregnancy and birth. We're trying to thrive in motherhood. I want to see more Black women thriving. I want to see less postpartum depression. I want to see less morbidity. I definitely want to see less mortality, but it means giving your children the best version of you, breaking generational cycles that no longer serve us. And we know the statistics now, right? We know the statistics. We've heard the horror stories. It's time to walk away from looking for someone else to save us. Now, as I said in the beginning, I'm going to bring my Suge Knight back. If you're done with this system telling you what to do, telling you that you're fragile, telling you that all your sisters are dying, just mosey on down. All you have to do is walk down the aisle and join Rooted Mama Records. I'll see you guys in the next episode.